Here we are about the middle of the record, and we have Osira, Nighthawk, and Ruby cruising through the night, watching cities aflame as Osira stares out the window in reflection not only of the life that she's leaving, but maybe the life she's entering into. And like all agents of change, there are moments when you've wrought forces into motion, and you have to ask yourself, is this a good or bad thing? And so Osira is very much at that moment, and that's very much where we're at in this moment of the album. Once the X and I give their message of propaganda, of course, Nighthawk and Osira, who, like a lot of young people, pay a lot of attention to social media, realize that not only is the number one suppressive governmental agency in the world after them, and their lives, of course, are in danger as they've been sort of hunted before, but now they're the target of kind of speculation. People are questioning their families. Like, they've been drawn into something that's so massive and beyond them. They're really scared beyond a level of just for their own personal safety. Now they're into something that's so big and so vast that they don't know where to go. And so they make the decision, along with Ruby, that they're going to go to Dr. Aish's house. And if you remember, Dr. Aish was the hacker guy that started this whole thing because Osira reached out to him with Shiny's demo, which was his last sort of Will and Testament song. And he was the one that sent her on this magical mission of figuring out what this was all about. So they figure, as a sort of old school hacker, he'd be the one person they could trust against a governmental agency like the X and I. So this song is them driving through the night to try to get to Dr. Aish's house. So this is Osira looking out the window, sort of whimsically sort of musing on her life that she's left because she could never go back to who she was. It's sort of a loss of innocence type of thing. But at the same time, as she's looking out the window, she's looking at people rioting and buildings are burning. Why is there rioting and all this stuff going on? Well, once the X and I admitted that they weren't in total control, and they've had 20 plus years of being in total control, it sort of creates this little crack in the system where, oh, wait a second. A lot of what we're being told and reassured about maybe isn't as certain as they make it out to be. And so this ripples in the social order, and things in a very tight-knit society tend to fall apart very, very quickly, because when things are built upon a lie, as most propaganda is, once the lie is subverted, well, that lie crumbles very quickly. What does the institutions normally do, as I've talked about before? Well, they tend to double, triple, quadruple down on the lie. What happens when you're lying for the 8th or 9th time in a row? So the social order is cracking apart. And so Osira and Nighthawk also realize that they've set into motion not only something that's risking the lives of themselves and their families and their friends, but that the social order, which Osira really, really had hoped to come about as somebody who was a proponent of social change, now she's seeing the very real net result of that decision, pro and con. I think there is nothing more powerful than the faith of a young person that their vote, their energy properly pointed, can change the world. As we know, as being a little bit older, it doesn't always work so simply, but it is that faith and optimism in the simplicity of process that institutes change, whether it's Jimi Hendrix or a young political person who decides to get into the process. In essence, the cynicism is part of what grinds the gears down into a stasis. But young people tend to believe that if they push and they push hard enough, well, something can happen. So Osira has inextricably been the agent for change. And on one level, Osira is feeling, wow, I'm actually in the middle of something very, very important. And I'm actually at the center of that change, which is something that I wanted. But now I'm seeing the actual sort of net results of that. It's the mixed feelings that people have recently when we saw some of the rioting in the social unrest in the last few years. On one level, people will say, well, that's awful. Businesses are being burned. People are being harmed. People will be put out of work. And yet another person will say, well, this is what happens when you don't listen to people. This is what happens when you ignore generation after generation that really does want positive change. When you get into the fabric of what it means to break paradigms, be careful, because when you peer into the darkness may peer back into you. And again, this is why most people are very afraid of taking positions in the world of power, because they're very afraid not only of what it means to take on the mantle of responsibility, but also the forces that rise up in opposition.